How do everybody? So we've got a video coming here, and I just want to talk about this letter that I've just become aware of, which is from Member of Parliament for Finchley and Golders Green, Mike Freer. Now, Mike Freer has been an MP since 2010, and before that he was a councillor, I believe since 1990, and it appears to me that he's been hounded out of his job as a Member of Parliament. What I'll do is I'll read through his letter. We've obviously got it on screen here so you can do it yourself, but I will read through it anyway, and we can sort of just make an assessment at the end of it as to what the lessons learned from here. So this is to a councillor, Peter Zinkin, who's the chairman of Finchley and Golders Green Conservatives. That's obviously in Finchley, and Mike Pete Freer writes to him, "Dear Peter, I'm writing to inform you that after considerable thought, I have decided not to seek the nomination as the Conservative Party candidate at the next general election. As you can imagine, this has not been an easy decision. Having first been elected to serve residents of West Finchley in 1990 as a local councillor, going on to be a leader of Barnet Council and then a Member of Parliament for Finchley at Golders Green. I've been in public service for our area for 34 years. I mean, this is obviously a man who, whether you like his politics or not, clearly really does take his job seriously and really does clearly believe in working for his local community, and he's got a lot of love for his area, obviously. Since my election as MP in 2010, I have sadly had several serious threats to my personal safety. The attacks by Muslims against Crusaders, Ali Harbi Ali, and the recent arson attack, where the motives remain unclear, have weighed heavily on me and my husband, Angelo. These serious incidents are alongside the many low-level incidents. No MP can operate effectively without the support of their spouse and wider family. Sadly, the serious incidents place intolerable stress on them." I mean, that most recent arson attack, although this will be purely speculative, I imagine probably is linked to what's happening in Israel and Palestine, more than likely, and it may also link into the fact that the man is obviously homosexual as well, by my reading of this, so that may well be linked into it as well, that could be a homophobic attack, which is totally unacceptable in my opinion. It will be an enormous wrench to step down. It has been the privilege of my life to serve the wonderfully diverse and vibrant area that is Finchley and Golders Green. Serving the constituents and getting things done is what makes the job worthwhile. I am also deeply grateful for the unwavering support from the local association membership and, of course, our agent, Rachel Shawcross. You and they can be assured of my continued support for the party locally and nationally." And then just goes on to Mike Freer, Member of Parliament, Finchley and Golders Green. For example, the industrial scale rape and the cover-up of it by the police makes it, or you would think that it would anyway, abundantly clear that the more serious crimes will be covered up. No one gets caught, as long as no one gets called a racist, and have their pensions put at risk, and I do think that's been a big part of this. Why are MP surprised though that this is now happening to them, or that they've been put into these kinds of positions where they feel like they have to leave the jobs? You know, did they not think that it would bleed over into other parts of society, or did they just think that it would stay on council estates, and you know, it'd only really be working class white girls from very troubled backgrounds living in care homes who would be targeted by these mobs, and that the police would protect? I guess they're finding out the hard way that no, these things do have a tendency to bleed into other facets of life as well, and including the schools as well, that we saw recently. You know, where like that teacher from Batley High School, he's still in hiding now. Nobody knows where he is, and that's what happens. You know, because our MPs aren't willing to say what needs to be said, and that doesn't mean that all Muslims, by the way, are bad people. Far from it. Because as we've seen with this school in London with Miss Burble Singh, Keeley, I think it's called, Michaela School. There's plenty of Muslims there who've been pressured and harassed and bullied, and it's why they had to take the praying away from in the playgrounds as well, because the more fervent adherents to the religion were trying to intimidate the more relaxed, so that I can't think of a better word really, but the less orthodox members, or people who adhere to different sects of Islam. So you know, this doesn't just affect non-Muslims and it's all Muslims. You know, this affects probably, I wouldn't be surprised actually if this affects a lot more Muslims than it does non-Muslims, you know, behind closed doors and within a lot of these communities where there are overwhelming majority of Muslim people living in an area. I wouldn't be surprised if it was affecting a heck of a lot of Muslim people who are generally law-abiding, good citizens. But again, are they surprised? You know, I mean, not only that, but they allow BLM to riot on our streets as well. You know, they tear down the statue, and you know, they even tried to set fire to the cenotaph. I can actually remember seeing that on Sky News, and that young lad who did that walked out of court with nothing more than, I think, a minor fine. You know, it wasn't even a slap on the wrist; it was a slap in the face for society. Also, while we couldn't even visit our dying relatives, and this affected me personally, by the way, during lockdown, my great-grandmother died. Sorry, not my great-grandmother, my grandmother died. Not of the cough, but of cancer. But she had to die on her own in hospital. We weren't allowed to visit her. Yet those people were allowed to go into the streets and riot. Does that particular virus know that the difference between visiting a loved one in a care home or in a hospital? You know, and my grandmother was actually dying, so what would it have mattered if I'd have passed it on to her? She was actually dying. You know, she was literally in the death throes. You know, and we weren't allowed to go visit her. But you know, you go and riot. Well, it doesn't matter if you cough and breathe on each other. There, you know, the virus knows not to spread between people. You know, this is the double standards that we've been seeing. And again, why do MPs then act surprised when they start seeing these radical people from minority groups? Because they feel like they're untouchable. Because they actually are untouchable. Because what lessons has it taught them? These more radical people from these parts of society? Well, I'll tell you right now, it teaches them that they can be as violent as they want, and in fact more violent they are the better, because the less likely the police and MPs are to speak up about them and try and deal with them. And all they have to do is that if they are challenged on their behaviour is just cry racism, and everybody will back off scared. They won't want to touch them with a 10-foot barge pole. So again, our MPs, why are our MPs acting surprised? This is like high school logic, that you can figure this out and see where this chain of events is going to end up. That you're creating a privileged class of people who feel like they can do whatever they want because they actually can to a certain degree. My goodness, it's been in the papers that half of the Rotherham gangsters who've come out of prison haven't been deported, even though they're supposed to have been. People that we 100% know were doing what they were doing, and they're still living in the country now. You know, but anyway. So what can be done about this? Well, first, I think we need very strong-willed and intelligent people need to start putting themselves forward for positions in Parliament and councils. I mean, if you've got to form your own party locally, this could take a long time. Do so, you know. Now, I would say avoid Labour, Lib Dems and Conservatives. You've absolutely no chance of getting in there, because the people that get into positions there are people who told them lines. They aren't willing to do what needs to be done. They're too scared of being labelled some sort of phobe or igot. And that includes people who are of a more brown complexion than myself. You know, I mean, I was talking to a gentleman in the comments not so long ago. He was a Muslim man from somewhere in the UK, and because I'd mentioned one of the anti-LGBT protests with the schools, and I think he felt like I was in support of that. And it's like, no. It's not that they were against the actual concept of LGBT in the radical form being taught in schools. That's the problem. It's the fact that people from outside of the area who had no connections to the school were protesting was why I raised. And that's a failure on me. I didn't explain that properly in that video. You know, and I did explain that to the gentleman as well. And it was more to do with the mob mentality of what we're seeing happening with radical groups. And it's the same with how this MP's leaving. It's not that all Muslims are bad people. It's that there are very motivated and very well organised radicals who feel that they are completely untouchable. So we do need people of all different persuasions and backgrounds and communities to come forward who are willing to stand up and basically take the brunt of the abuse and the threats and all of that. Unfortunately, there's no other way around it. You know, otherwise we're going to be going down a really, really dark road. We also need to start calling out this behaviour when we see it more often as well. And I don't just mean like I'm doing now just in a video. I mean like people in the street when you're seeing it happening, or if you're hearing people saying it in work. These people really need to be challenged, you know, and highlighting and ringing in things like LBC or Talk Radio, and just tell, you know, and getting this conversation going, because it has to be normalised that this kind of behaviour is totally unacceptable for a functioning society. You know, what we're seeing happening is what you see in failed states. You know, it's dangerous. It's really, really dangerous. But I don't know whether we can stop this ball from rolling or not now. It might even be worth forming sort of pressure groups, you know, like think tank type groups, where you can get enough people on board who are reasonable and rational and do things like, say, contacting the local police, contacting the local council, putting pressure onto them so that when we start seeing these mobs turning up and they're not getting dealt with, let them know this is absolutely not acceptable and you need to start dealing with this. And we don't care if you get labelled a racist or not, because that is just a tactic that is used to shut you up and stop you doing your job, so that these gangs can get away with literal murder, some of them, you know, with some of those young girls that they've killed, and to tell them to stop acting like cowards, basically. Because they're not going to, whilst the only people pressuring them are the extremists, they're not going to change the way, because why would they? Unfortunately, this is the only thing that they respond to. And it may even be a case of trying to get campaigns put together where they stop, like with the police covering up grooming gangs, like we need to actually start campaigning to get the people who covered them up not only sacked but stripped of the pensions and everything. You know, like, this is absolutely unacceptable that our country has been allowed to descend into mob violence like it is doing. Another thing as well is, although I said what I was on about before wasn't about talking to people day to day, but that is also something that we do need to do as well. You know, just in your day-to-day life, just have conversations with people, talk to them about these sorts of incidents. You know, talk about things like this MP losing, you know, resigning, talking about things like the grooming gangs and the cover-ups, you know, these school protests, nepotism in various institutions that we're seeing, you know, like where people from certain backgrounds, we saw it in London where a particular police investigator was a police officer. She'd been covering up for family members or people linked to her family who were involved in some serious crimes, but then the people investigating her were of a similar community and they were sort of just letting her off with nothing but a warning. You know, so this sort of stuff really does need to be highlighted. Also, the abuse of the legal system as well. We've had quite a few cases coming through where there's been fake legal organisations helping people to become, you know, to get people into the country, but also people working within the judicial system. I mean, there's even one judge at the moment who's possibly looking at getting sentenced, you know, who's been involved in allowing illegal migrants to stay in the country. All this needs highlighting and talking about. Don't argue with people about it. Just show them the facts, and just don't even give your own views on it. Just say, look, this is the facts. And when they say, well, when they try coming out with excuses, or if they say, well, this is actually wrong, say, right, well, how would you deal with it then? How would you deal with it? How would you suggest we deal with this? Because at the moment, it's very easy for people to just call you some sort of bigot or a racist or a phobe or whatever, but they provide absolutely no answers. And I think the only way we're going to start convincing people like that is to start saying, well, how would you deal with this? How would you do it differently then? Well, I'm going to leave it at that anyway. I mean, if you've enjoyed that, found it insightful, interesting, or any of all that good stuff, please like, subscribe, definitely put a comment below. I love reading your comments, and I'll link in as many videos that are, and articles that I can to do with this topic in the description below. And I may not get them all in there today, but as time goes on, I'll add a few more, because I've talked about quite a few different things in this video. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Thank you. Goodbye.